I'm June, 67 years old, a retired English teacher living alone after my husband Gerald passed away 12 years ago. My peaceful retirement shattered yesterday when my daughter Katherine grabbed my phone from my hands and threw it on the floor. The screen cracked as her words cut deeper. "You won't need this anymore. I'll decide what's best for you." The control in her voice terrified me. So, this morning, I packed a small bag and disappeared without a word. If you're watching this video, please hit like and subscribe to follow my journey of reclaiming my life after my own daughter tried to take control of everything I am. My life before this incident was comfortable and fulfilling. After teaching English for 40 years at Lincoln High School, I embraced retirement 2 years ago with excitement for this new chapter. Gerald, my husband of 38 years, had passed away from a sudden heart attack, leaving me to navigate life alone. Though the grief was overwhelming at first, I eventually found my footing. Katherine, my only daughter, had always been the pride of my life. At 38, she had built an impressive career as a corporate attorney at a prestigious law firm downtown. She married Marcus, a pediatric surgeon, and they blessed me with two wonderful grandchildren, Noah, who just turned 10, and sweet little Sophia, who's 7. We had always been close, or at least I thought we were. Sunday dinners at their spacious suburban home became our tradition, and I cherished watching my grandchildren grow. Retirement opened up a world of possibilities I never had time to explore during my teaching years. I discovered social media, reconnected with former colleagues and students, and developed a fondness for sharing my thoughts online. My Facebook friends grew from just a handful to over 300, many of them, former students who seemed genuinely interested in keeping up with their old English teacher. I joined a dance class at the community center, something I had always wanted to do but never found time for. The joy of moving to music twice a week filled me with energy I hadn't felt in years. I also became part of a book club that met every other Thursday at the local library. We read everything from classics to contemporary fiction, and the discussions were intellectually stimulating. It was at the dance class that I met Walter Jenkins, a 70-year-old retired architect who had lost his wife to cancer 3 years prior. He had kind eyes and a gentle sense of humor that made me laugh for the first time in years. Our friendship developed naturally, beginning with coffee after dance class, then occasional dinners, and eventually weekend outings to museums and concerts. When our relationship began to blossom into something more romantic, I felt like a teenager again, with butterflies in my stomach whenever we planned to meet. Walter was respectful, intelligent, and shared my love for literature and art. We connected on a level I hadn't experienced in years, perhaps even with Gerald, though I felt guilty making such comparisons. The first signs of trouble appeared when I mentioned Walter to Katherine during one of our Sunday dinners. Her smile tightened, and she asked pointed questions about him, where he lived, what he did for a living, if he had children of his own. At first, I thought it was natural concern, but her interrogation felt excessive. After that dinner, Katherine began calling me multiple times each day. She would ask about my plans, who I was seeing, and even how I was spending my money. The frequency of these calls increased from once a day to 3 or 4 times, often at odd hours. "Mom, I was just thinking about you. What are you up to today?" She would ask, her voice casual, but her questions increasingly probing. "Did you take your medication this morning?" became a regular question, even though I had never missed a dose and had always managed my health independently. I noticed Katherine watching me more closely when I interacted with my grandchildren, as though evaluating my competence. Once, when I mentioned taking Noah and Sophia to the zoo, she intervened, saying, "I don't think that's a good idea, Mom. What if they run off? Could you really keep up with them?" The comment stung, as I had always been an active grandmother who took pride in my relationship with my grandchildren. I had taken them on numerous outings before without incident. The situation escalated during a dinner at Katherine's house about a month ago. After the children went to bed, she poured herself a glass of wine and sat me down at the kitchen table. Marcus conveniently had an emergency at the hospital, so it was just the two of us. "Mom, we need to talk about your financial situation." She began, her voice taking on the same tone she likely used with her legal clients. "Have you updated your will recently? Do you have a power of attorney in place? What about your retirement accounts?" I was taken aback by the directness of her questions. "My finances are in order, Katherine. Gerald and I planned carefully for my retirement." She persisted, asking for specifics about my accounts, my insurance policies, and even the deed to my house. When I hesitated to provide details, she sighed heavily. "Mom, I'm just trying to help. You're getting older and these things need to be in order." I'm your daughter. You should trust me with this information. I changed the subject, but the tension lingered throughout the evening. As she drove me home, she mentioned that she had been researching assisted living facilities just in case. I'm perfectly capable of living independently, I told her firmly. For now, Mom, she replied, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. But it's good to plan ahead. That night, I called my old friend Patricia, who had retired from the English department the same year I did. When I described Catherine's behavior, Patricia grew concerned. June, it sounds like Catherine is trying to take control. My sister went through something similar with her son. It started with questions and escalated to him taking over her finances. Be careful. Her warning stayed with me, but I pushed it aside, not wanting to believe my own daughter would try to control my life. After all, she had always been my smart, loving little girl. The signs became impossible to ignore as weeks passed. Catherine began dropping by my house unannounced often when she knew Walter and I had plans. She would arrive with groceries I hadn't requested or cleaning supplies, suggesting my house wasn't being properly maintained. The bathroom could use a good scrubbing, Mom, she would say, pulling on rubber gloves as though my housekeeping skills had suddenly deteriorated after decades of maintaining an immaculate home. Once, I found her in my kitchen, reorganizing my refrigerator and throwing out perfectly good food because it was a day past the expiration date. Mom, you need to be careful about food safety at your age. Your immune system isn't what it used to be, she lectured, tossing a yogurt I had bought just 2 days earlier. I was even more alarmed when I received a call from Dr. Matthews, my family physician for over 20 years. June, Katherine came to see me yesterday. She's concerned about your memory and decision-making. She mentioned some incidents that worried her, he said carefully. What incidents? I asked, genuinely confused. Dr. Matthews hesitated. She mentioned you forgetting appointments, misplacing items, and making some unusual financial decisions. Is any of this happening? I was stunned. Absolutely not. I haven't forgotten any appointments, and the only financial decisions I've made recently were planned purchases for my home and some travel with a friend. The doctor seemed relieved. I thought as much. You've always been sharp as a tack, June. But Catherine seemed quite concerned. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table, hands shaking. My own daughter had gone behind my back to my doctor, fabricating concerns about my mental health. The violation felt profound. Catherine's criticism of my choices became relentless. When I bought a new blue dress for a concert Walter and I planned to attend, she frowned upon seeing it. That's a bit young for you, isn't it, Mom? And did you really need another dress? Your closet is already full. When I mentioned using some of my retirement funds for a weekend trip to the mountains with Walter, she launched into a lecture about financial responsibility. Mom, you need to be careful with your money. What if you need long-term care? Medicare doesn't cover everything, you know. The incident that truly alarmed me happened after I had a minor fall in my kitchen. I had slipped on a small puddle of water and fallen, bruising my hip slightly, but otherwise unharmed. I mentioned it casually to Catherine, trying to be open about my life. Her reaction was immediate and extreme. Within hours, she arrived at my house with brochures for medical alert systems, grab bars for my bathroom, and information about home health aides. This is a wake-up call, Mom, she said, spreading the materials across my coffee table. You can't live alone anymore. It's too dangerous. Catherine, it was a minor fall. Everyone slips occasionally, I protested. At your age, one fall can change everything, she countered. You could break a hip next time. Or worse. She went on to suggest I either hire someone to stay with me or consider moving closer to her home where she could keep an eye on me. That evening, when Walter and I met for dinner, I shared my concerns. His face grew serious as I recounted Catherine's behavior. June, I hate to say this, but what you're describing sounds like elder control. My friend Harold experienced something similar with his daughter. It started with concern, but evolved into her controlling every aspect of his life, from his finances to where he could go and who he could see. Eventually, she convinced a doctor he was incompetent and took over everything. What happened to Harold? I asked, my stomach knotting with anxiety. He lost everything, his independence, his dignity. He's living with her now, and she monitors his every move. He can't even call me without her listening in. Walter's words sent a chill through me. Could Catherine really be heading down that path? I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was mounting. That night, I attempted to have an honest conversation with my daughter. I called and asked if we could meet for lunch the next day. At a quiet cafe, I tried to establish boundaries. Catherine, I appreciate your concern, but I need you to respect my independence. I'm still perfectly capable of managing my own life. She reached across the table and patted my hand condescendingly. Mom, I'm not trying to control you. I'm just worried. That's what daughters do, they worry about their mothers. There's a difference between concern and control, I insisted. Catherine's expression hardened slightly. You're being paranoid, Mom. Maybe it's time for you to talk to someone about these anxieties you're having. By suggesting my legitimate concerns were symptoms of mental instability, she effectively shut down the conversation. I left the lunch feeling defeated and increasingly concerned. Throughout this period, my smartphone became my lifeline to independence. Walter had helped me select it when I retired, and I had become surprisingly adept at using it. I joined several Facebook groups for seniors, kept in touch with former colleagues and students, and even started following online courses in art history, a subject I had always loved but never had time to study properly. I connected with former students who had become teachers themselves and enjoyed mentoring them. The digital world opened up possibilities that helped me feel relevant and engaged. My phone represented connection learning and autonomy, all of which I valued deeply in my retirement years. The day everything changed began like any other. The late April sun streamed through my kitchen windows as I prepared my morning tea. My phone chimed with a message from Walter. Good morning, beautiful. How about we move our Florida trip up to next week? Found some great flight deals, 2 weeks of sunshine, sound good. I smiled, warmth spreading through me as I typed my reply. Sounds perfect. Can't wait to walk on the beach with you. Walter and I had been planning this trip for months, our first extended vacation together. We had researched hotels, beaches, and activities extensively. I'd even bought a new swimsuit, my first in over a decade. I was still smiling at my phone when I heard a key in the front door. Catherine had a spare key for emergencies, but she rarely used it. She appeared in my kitchen doorway, already dressed for work in a tailored navy suit, her briefcase in hand. Mom, I was in the neighborhood for an early meeting and thought I'd check on you. She explained, her eyes immediately drawn to my phone and the smile on my face. You look happy this morning. Good news. There was something in her tone, a slight edge that made me hesitate. But I decided to be open. After all, this was my daughter, and I was excited about my plans. Walter and I are finalizing details for our Florida trip. We're thinking of going next week instead of waiting until June. Catherine's face changed instantly, her professional composure cracking. Florida with Walter. For how long? 2 weeks, I replied, suddenly feeling defensive. We've been planning this for months. I mentioned it to you before. She set her briefcase down with a thud. You absolutely did not tell me about a 2-week trip to Florida with this man. Yes, I did, I insisted. At dinner last month. And his name is Walter, not this man. You've met him several times. Catherine began pacing my small kitchen. 2 weeks alone with a man you barely know, Mom. Do you have any idea how dangerous that could be? What if something happens to you down there? What if you get sick? What if he's after your money? Walter is not after my money, I said firmly. And I'm perfectly capable of traveling. I was a chaperone on international school trips for years, remember? That was different. You were younger then, and you weren't alone with a strange man. Walter isn't strange. He's my boyfriend. I stated plainly, using the term for the first time. We care deeply for each other. Catherine's eyes widened. Boyfriend, Mom, you're 67 years old. And still very much alive. I replied, my patience wearing thin. Age hasn't robbed me of my heart or my desire for companionship. This is exactly what I've been worried about, Catherine said, her voice rising. You're making impulsive, reckless decisions. Do you even know this man's background? Has he been married before? Does he have debts? Criminal history. Walter is a retired architect who was married for 45 years before his wife died of cancer. He has 2 adult children who live in Seattle and 4 grandchildren. He volunteers at the art museum on weekends and has never had so much as a parking ticket. And most importantly, he respects me as an adult capable of making my own decisions. Catherine wasn't listening. She had pulled out her own phone and was scrolling frantically. "I'm looking up flights right now. I'm coming with you on this trip." "Absolutely not," I said firmly. "This is a romantic vacation for Walter and me." She looked up, disgust evident on her face. "Romantic, Mom? That's inappropriate at your age. What are you thinking?" Her words stung like a slap. "According to my daughter, I was too old for romance, too fragile for independence, too incompetent for self-determination. I'm thinking that I'm a grown woman who doesn't need her daughter's permission to live her life." I replied, my voice steady despite my rising anger. "Mom, you're not thinking clearly. This man has obviously manipulated you. He's probably after your house, your savings." I tried calling Walter to put Catherine's mind at ease, but when I picked up my phone, she lunged across the kitchen and snatched it from my hands. "Who are you calling him so he can feed you more lies?" "Give me back my phone, Catherine," I demanded, reaching for it. She stepped back, scrolling through my messages with Walter. "2 weeks at the Ocean View Resort, do you know how expensive that is? Is he making you pay for everything? We're splitting the costs, not that it's any of your business. Now give me back my phone." I reached for it again, but what happened next will be forever burned into my memory. Catherine's face contorted with rage and frustration. She raised her arm and slammed my phone onto the tiled kitchen floor with such force that the screen shattered instantly, pieces of glass skittering across the floor like tiny ice crystals. In the silence that followed, her words fell like heavy stones. "You won't need this anymore. I'll decide what's best for you." Her voice was cold, filled with contempt, as though I were a child being disciplined. In that moment, my daughter became a stranger to me, someone who saw me not as a person, but as a problem to be managed. "I'm calling Dr. Matthews today." She continued, her voice calmer now, but no less frightening. "I'm going to discuss having you evaluated for cognitive decline, and I'll be canceling this ridiculous Florida trip." She reached for her briefcase, her movements efficient and determined. "Marcus and I have been talking. We think you should sell this house and move into our guest suite. It's too dangerous for you to live alone, and clearly you're not making good decisions." I stood frozen in my kitchen, looking down at the shattered remains of my phone, the symbol of my independence now broken beyond repair. "I need to get to work," Catherine said, checking her watch. "I'll come by tonight with dinner, and we can discuss the logistics of the move. Don't worry about anything, Mom. I'll take care of everything from now on." She kissed my cheek, the gesture so at odds with her previous actions that it felt surreal. Then she was gone, the door closing behind her with a firm click, leaving me alone with the pieces of my shattered phone and the realization that my own daughter was systematically dismantling my independence. For hours after Catherine left, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the broken phone on the counter where I had gathered its pieces. The gravity of what had just happened settled over me like a heavy blanket. My own daughter had not only destroyed my property in a fit of rage, but had explicitly stated her intention to take control of my life, my home, and my decisions. I recalled the warning signs I'd been ignoring for months, the increasing questions, the unannounced visits, the conversations with my doctor behind my back, the criticism of my decisions and relationships. It all pointed to a frightening conclusion: Catherine no longer viewed me as an autonomous adult capable of self-determination. As daylight faded into evening, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with memories and revelations. I remembered my friend Mildred, who had reluctantly moved in with her daughter after a minor health scare. Within months, she had been moved to an assisted living facility against her wishes, her house sold, her possessions distributed among family members who deemed them unnecessary. When I visited her there, the vibrant woman I had known for decades was a shell of herself, medicated into compliance, her spirit broken. "Don't let them take your power." "June," she had whispered during my last visit, clutching my hand with surprising strength. "Once it's gone, you never get it back." Around 3 in the morning, I made my decision. If Catherine returned tonight as promised, ready to implement her plan to move me into her home and divest me of my independence, she would find an empty house. I would not be managed, controlled, or diminished even by my own child. I found an old flip phone in my desk drawer, a backup I had kept when I upgraded to the smartphone. It still had some charge enough to make a call. Walter answered on the second ring, his voice groggy with sleep, but immediately alert when he heard the strain in mine. "June, what's wrong?" "It's the middle of the night." I explained everything that had happened with Catherine, my voice breaking several times as I recounted the conversation and the violent destruction of my phone. She's coming back tonight to start implementing her plan. Walter, I'm frightened. I feel like I'm about to lose everything. My home, my independence, even my relationship with you. Listen to me. Walter's voice was firm, reassuring. Pack a bag, just essentials. I'll be there at 7 before she's likely to come by. We'll figure this out together. Where will we go? I asked, already moving toward my closet to find my suitcase. My place first, then we can decide. But June, you need to understand something. What Katherine did, what she threatened to do, that's a form of abuse. Elder abuse. It may be coming from a place of concern, but it's control and manipulation, plain and simple. His words hit me hard. Abuse. The term seemed too harsh for what my daughter was doing, but as I reflected on her actions and threats, I couldn't deny the truth of it. She was using fear, guilt, and medical gaslighting to strip me of my autonomy. As dawn broke, I began preparing methodically. I packed one suitcase with essentials, clothing, toiletries, medications. In my large handbag, I placed important documents: my passport, social security card, insurance information, property deed, and bank statements. From the safe in my closet, I took some emergency cash I had always kept on hand and a few pieces of jewelry that had sentimental value, including my mother's pearl necklace and the anniversary diamond earrings Gerald had given me on our 30th anniversary. I looked around my bedroom at the home I had shared with Gerald for decades, where we had raised Katherine, where I had planned to spend my remaining years. The thought of leaving was painful, but the alternative, being stripped of my dignity and independence, was unthinkable. At my desk, I wrote a brief note: need time for myself. Don't look for me. I am safe. The message was deliberately sparse, providing no information about my whereabouts or plans. I placed it on the kitchen table where Katherine would be sure to see it. Walter arrived precisely at 7, his reliable silver sedan pulling into my driveway. He looked tired but determined as he helped me carry my suitcase to his car. Before leaving, I took one last look around my home, uncertain when or if I would return. Our first stop was a mobile phone store where Walter helped me purchase a new phone with a new number. I made sure it wasn't linked to my email account that Katherine had access to. Then we went to my bank, where I withdrew a significant amount from my savings and opened a new account at a different bank, one where Katherine had no connections. I also changed the passwords on all my email accounts and social media profiles. We need to move quickly, Walter advised as we left the bank. Katherine might already be trying to track you down. She has her job, I said. She won't miss me until evening. Don't underestimate her, June. She's a lawyer and she's determined. If she truly believes you're incapable of making decisions, she might take extreme measures. His warning spurred me to action. By noon, we had made all necessary arrangements to disappear effectively. We decided to proceed with our Florida plans, but changed the destination from the popular Ocean View Resort to a smaller, less-known beachfront hotel in a different city than we had originally planned. Walter made the new reservations using his credit card, ensuring there would be no paper trail leading back to me. We also moved our departure up, booking flights for the very next morning instead of waiting a week. As we drove to Walter's condominium, a modern building with good security in a neighborhood across town from my own, I felt a strange mixture of grief, fear, and something unexpected, a flicker of excitement. For the first time in decades, I was taking radical action, making a dramatic change that was entirely my own choice. Are you sure about this, June? Walter asked as we unloaded my suitcase in his guest room. It's not too late to try a different approach. We could consult an elder law attorney, get a protective order if necessary. I considered his suggestion, imagining the legal battle that might ensue, Katherine's hurt and anger, the potential estrangement from my grandchildren. I'm sure, I said finally. Katherine needs to understand that I'm still a person with rights and dignity. This may be the only way to make her see that. And honestly, I need some time and space to figure out who I am now and what I want for this chapter of my life. Walter nodded, respecting my decision. Then we'll do this your way. But promise me one thing. What's that? Eventually, when you're ready, you'll find a way to reconcile with Katherine. Not on her terms, but on terms that respect your autonomy. She's still your daughter, and I suspect her actions, misguided as they are, come from a place of love. I nodded, tears filling my eyes. I know they do. That's what makes this so painful. And that evening, as Catherine was likely arriving at my empty house, discovering my note, and perhaps already beginning a frantic search, Walter and I sat on his balcony watching the sunset. Despite the circumstances, there was a peace in knowing I had taken control of my own story. The Florida sun felt like a blessing on my skin as Walter and I strolled along the shore of Siesta Key Beach, the powdery white sand cool beneath our feet, despite the warmth of the day. We had been in Florida for 5 days, staying at a charming beachfront hotel that was smaller and more intimate than the resort we had originally booked. "You look relaxed for the first time since we arrived." Walter observed, his hand warm in mine. I smiled, realizing he was right. The first few days had been tense as I constantly checked over my shoulder, half expecting to see Catherine appear at any moment. But gradually, the peaceful rhythm of beach life had worked its magic. "I feel free," I admitted. Guilty, but free. Our days had fallen into a pleasant pattern: breakfast on our small balcony overlooking the Gulf of Mexico, morning walks on the beach, afternoons exploring local attractions or reading in the shade, and evenings enjoying seafood at waterfront restaurants. I had purchased a notebook in a local shop and had begun journaling, pouring out my thoughts and feelings about Catherine, about aging, about the unexpected turns my life had taken. The writing was therapeutic, helping me process the complex emotions swirling within me. One afternoon, sitting in a beach chair under an umbrella while Walter swam, I began writing something different, not just private reflections, but thoughts I felt might resonate with others. Before I knew it, I had outlined a blog about senior autonomy dignity and the complicated dynamics between aging parents and well-meaning adult children. I even thought of a title, "The Invisible Line: When Protection Becomes Control." When I showed Walter what I had written, his eyes lit up. "June, this is powerful. You should publish this." "Who would read it?" I asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Anyone who's aging or who has aging parents, which is practically everyone. Your perspective as both a parent and someone experiencing this control firsthand gives you unique insight." That evening, Walter helped me set up a simple blog using a platform that allowed anonymous posting. I was careful not to include specific details that could identify me or Catherine, but I shared my experiences and reflections openly. A week into our stay, as Walter and I enjoyed breakfast on our balcony, my new phone rang. The number belonged to Patricia, my friend and former colleague, one of the few people who had my new contact information. My stomach tightened as I answered. "June, are you all right?" Patricia's voice was tight with concern. "I'm fine, Patricia. Enjoying some sunshine in Florida?" "June, Catherine has been looking everywhere for you. She called me 3 times yesterday and she sounds frantic. She's filed a missing persons report with the police." My heart sank. "Did you tell her I contacted you?" "No, of course not. You asked me not to. But June, she's telling everyone you're suffering from memory issues and confusion, that you wandered off and might be in danger. She's even suggesting that Walter might have exploited your confusion to lure you away." Anger flared within me at the implication. "That's absolutely false. I left of my own free will after Catherine destroyed my phone and threatened to take over my life." "I know that, but she's convincing, June. She's a lawyer after all. She knows how to present a narrative. She's contacted all your friends from the book club and dance class. She even went to Walter's condo building and questioned the neighbors. The thought of Catherine interrogating people about me, spreading falsehoods about my mental state, made me feel violated all over again." "Has she been to the police?" I asked. "Yes, but they found your note and didn't consider it a high-risk disappearance. Still, she's persistent. She's posted on Facebook about you being missing and potentially confused with Walter's picture, suggesting he might have taken advantage of you." I closed my eyes, imagining the social media posts, the concerned comments, the spreading narrative that I was a confused old woman who had been manipulated or abducted. My decision to leave quietly was being reframed as evidence of mental instability. "What should I do, Patricia?" I asked, my voice small. "I can't tell you that, June. But I thought you should know what's happening back here. Whatever you decide, I'm on your side." After ending the call, I shared everything with Walter. His expression darkened as I described Catherine's actions. "She's trying to control the narrative," he said. "If she can convince everyone you're mentally incompetent, she gains legal ground for taking over your affairs when you return." That evening, using a library computer to maintain anonymity, I checked Catherine's Facebook page. My stomach clenched as I saw her posts. Urgent. My elderly mother, June Wilson, has been missing for over a week. She left a concerning note and may be experiencing confusion. She may be with this man, Walter Jenkins. If you see them, please contact me or the police immediately. Mom, if you're reading this, please come home. We're all worried sick. The post had dozens of comments expressing concern and promises to keep an eye out. Some speculated about my mental state or Walter's intentions feeding into Catherine's narrative. I scrolled through more posts and found pictures of my grandchildren holding signs saying, "Grandma, please come home. We miss you." The manipulation was clear, using the children to tug at my heartstrings and portray me as negligent for causing them distress. More disturbing were the comments suggesting I was selfish for putting my family through this, and speculating that I must be experiencing geriatric rebellion or senior dementia to have left so abruptly. The public narrative being constructed around my absence was everything I had feared. I was being portrayed as mentally incompetent Walter and as potentially predatory, and Katherine as the concerned, loving daughter trying to protect her vulnerable mother. This is why I need to tell my side of the story. I told Walter that night as we sat on the hotel balcony, the sound of waves a counterpoint to my troubled thoughts. If I don't define my own narrative, Katherine will do it for me. The next day, I published my first real blog post titled, "Why I Disappeared, An Elder's Declaration of Independence." In it, I explained why I had left, describing the escalating control, the broken phone incident, and my fear of losing autonomy. I was careful not to name Katherine or provide identifying details, but I was honest about the emotional impact of having my adult child try to take over my life. I ended the post with, "I am not confused. I am not being manipulated. I am a fully competent adult exercising my right to self-determination, and I am not alone." Many seniors face similar situations, their independence eroded by well-meaning family members who cannot see the line between protection and control. It's time for a conversation about elder autonomy and dignity. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Comments poured in from seniors sharing similar experiences, from adult children reconsidering their approach to aging parents, from social workers and elder advocates offering support and resources. My small act of self-assertion had struck a chord, revealing a widespread but often unaddressed issue. As painful as my situation with Katherine was, I began to see a purpose emerging from it, a chance to advocate for respect and dignity for aging individuals. Yet despite finding this new purpose, the estrangement from Katherine and my grandchildren weighed heavily on me. Each day brought both healing and heartache, the joy of reclaimed autonomy tempered by the pain of family discord. 2 weeks stretched into 3, then 4. Walter and I returned to his condominium after our Florida vacation, but I didn't return to my house, fearing Katherine might be watching it or might have even changed the locks under the guise of protecting my property. Instead, we found a small furnished apartment with a month-to-month lease. It wasn't home, but it was a space of my own, a placeholder while I determined my next steps. Walter was endlessly supportive, helping me settle in, making sure I had everything I needed, yet giving me space to process my emotions and decisions independently. Our relationship deepened through the crisis, his respect for my autonomy only strengthening my feelings for him. My blog had grown in readership, and I had connected with elder rights advocates who offered guidance and support. I even participated in a podcast about elder autonomy, using only my first name to maintain some privacy. Throughout this time, I had not directly contacted Katherine. I checked her social media occasionally and saw that her posts about my disappearance had tapered off, though she had never acknowledged that I might have left voluntarily due to her actions. Patricia kept me informed about the situation back home. According to her, Katherine had indeed been watching my house and had even hired a private investigator to try to locate me, though without success, since we had been careful about our digital footprint. After a month away, I decided it was time to break the silence. Not because I was ready to return to the previous dynamic, but because the situation needed to move forward one way or another. "I'm going to call her," I told Walter one evening. Not to surrender, but to begin the process of establishing new boundaries. He nodded, understanding the complexity of my decision. "Do you want me to be here when you do?" "No," I said after a moment's reflection. "This needs to be between Katherine and me." The next morning, I sat on the small balcony of my apartment, my new phone in hand, and dialed Katherine's number. My heart raced as it rang once, twice, then 3 times. I was about to hang up when she answered. Hello. Her voice was wary, not recognizing the new number. Katherine, it's Mom. There was a sharp intake of breath, then a flood of words. Mom, oh my God, Mom, where are you? Are you okay? I've been worried sick. The police haven't been any help, and I've been looking everywhere. Are you with him? Did he take you somewhere? Katherine, I interrupted firmly. I'm fine. I'm safe. I left voluntarily after you destroyed my phone and threatened to take over my life. Silence, then. What are you talking about? I've been trying to protect you. You've been making such strange decisions lately, and I was worried sick when you disappeared. I didn't disappear, Katherine. I left. There's a difference. I left because you crossed a line from concern into control. That's ridiculous, she said, her voice hardening. I was trying to help you. You're the one who ran off with some man you barely know, worrying your family half to death. Do you have any idea what this has done to Noah and Sophia? They think their grandmother abandoned them. The guilt tactic was immediate and effective. I felt a stab of pain thinking about my grandchildren's confusion and hurt. I'm sorry the children have been upset, I said carefully. But Katherine, you need to understand something. I left because I felt threatened by your behavior. You broke my property, you were planning to move me out of my home against my will, and you were spreading false information about my mental state to my doctor and friends. I never, she began, but I cut her off. Yes, you did, and we need to talk about it. Not over the phone, but in person. I want to meet you, but on neutral ground, not at your house or mine. There was a long pause. Are you coming home? She finally asked, her voice smaller. I don't know yet. That depends on several things, but I'm willing to talk. We agreed to meet the following day at the Blue Teapot, a cafe I had frequented for years. It was public enough to provide some security, but quiet enough for a private conversation. Just you, Katherine, I specified. Not Marcus, not the children. This conversation needs to be between us. Fine, she agreed, though I could hear the tension in her voice. Tomorrow at 2. I arrived at the cafe 30 minutes early, selecting a table in the corner that offered both privacy and a clear view of the entrance. I had dressed carefully in a blue dress and cardigan that I knew projected confidence and competence. My hair freshly styled, my makeup subtle but precise. Katherine arrived exactly at 2, looking pale and tense in a gray suit that seemed to hang on her frame. She had lost weight, I realized, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. Despite everything, my heart ached at seeing her distress. She spotted me immediately and hurried over, but stopped short of embracing me, sensing my reserve. Instead, she slid into the chair opposite me, eyes scanning my face. You look well, she said, sounding almost disappointed, as though she had expected to find me diminished in some way. I am well, I replied simply. Where have you been? Are you still with him, Walter? Where I've been isn't important right now. What matters is why I left. Katherine's expression hardened. You left because you're being manipulated by a man who has isolated you from your family. No, I said firmly. I left because my adult daughter smashed my phone, told me she would be making all my decisions from now on, and planned to move me out of my home against my will. I left because I was afraid of losing my independence and dignity. That's not what happened, she protested. You're twisting things. I leaned forward. Katherine, you grabbed my phone from my hands and smashed it on the floor. You said, and I quote, "You won't need this anymore. I'll decide what's best for you." Do you deny saying those exact words? She flushed, looking down at her untouched tea. I was upset. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it then? I was worried about you. You were suddenly planning to go off to Florida with a man you barely knew. You've been making all these impulsive decisions, spending money, recklessly acting like a teenager instead of a responsible adult. Katherine, I am a responsible adult. I've managed my household, my finances, and my life successfully for decades. Nothing about that changed when I turned 67, or when I started seeing Walter. I paused, trying to understand the fear behind her controlling behavior. What is this really about? Why are you suddenly so convinced I can't make my own decisions? She was quiet for a long moment, then looked up with tears in her eyes. Do you remember Linda Matthews from my office? I nodded, recalling the young attorney Katherine had mentioned occasionally. Her father was about your age. He started dating after her mother died. The woman he met seemed nice at first, but she systematically isolated him from his family, convinced him to change his will, and took almost everything when he died suddenly last year. Linda and her brothers got nothing, not even family heirlooms. They're still in court fighting over it. So that was it. Catherine's controlling behavior stemmed from a fear of history repeating itself, of losing both her mother's affection and her inheritance. And you think Walter is doing the same to me? I asked gently. I don't know him, she said defensively. He could be. Men target wealthy widows all the time. It happens every day. I'm hardly wealthy, Katherine. And Walter has his own money. He was a successful architect with investments and a pension. If anything, he's more financially secure than I am. That's what he tells you, she muttered. That's what I know. I corrected her. Because unlike you, I actually took the time to get to know him before making judgments. I took a deep breath, changing approach. Katherine, I understand you're afraid. You've seen something bad happen to someone else's parent, and you're terrified it could happen to me. That fear comes from love, and I appreciate that. But the way you've expressed it through control and manipulation has damaged our relationship. Her eyes filled with tears. I never meant to control you. I just wanted to protect you. I know, but protection that dismantles dignity isn't protection at all. It's another form of harm. We talked for over 2 hours, gradually moving from accusation to understanding. I explained how her actions had made me feel diminished and disrespected. She shared her fears about my safety and well-being. I kept thinking about Grandma Wilson. She admitted referring to my mother, who had developed dementia in her final years. How she insisted she was fine right up until she left the stove on and nearly burned down the house. I was terrified you were showing early signs and refusing to acknowledge them, just like she did. But there's no evidence of that, I pointed out. Dr. Matthews has never found any cognitive concerns during my checkups. I know that now, she acknowledged. Marcus has been telling me I've been overreacting. He says I projected my worst fears onto normal behavior. Hearing that Marcus had recognized Catherine's behavior as problematic gave me hope that reconciliation might be possible. As our meeting drew to a close, I laid out my conditions for moving forward. I'm willing to rebuild our relationship, Katherine, but things need to change. You need to respect my autonomy and my choices. No more checking up on me unannounced. No more interrogating me about my spending or activities. No more talking to my doctor behind my back. She nodded slowly. And what about Walter? Where do you see that going? Walter and I care deeply for each other. He'll continue to be part of my life. You need to accept that and make an effort to know him without prejudgment. Katherine didn't look entirely convinced, but nodded again. And will you come home? The kids miss you terribly. Eventually, I said. But I need to know my boundaries will be respected. Maybe we can start with dinner next week with Marcus and the children. See how that goes. We parted with a cautious hug, the first step on a long road to rebuilding trust. As I watched her walk away, I felt both hopeful and wary. Patterns of control aren't easily broken, and I knew Catherine's concerns wouldn't disappear overnight. But I had found my voice and my courage. I wouldn't be silenced or controlled again, even by those who claimed to love me most. 6 months have passed since that day in the Blue Teapot Cafe when Katherine and I began the delicate process of rebuilding our relationship. The journey hasn't been easy or straightforward, but we've made progress I once thought impossible. In those early weeks after our first meeting, we proceeded cautiously. Our initial dinner with Marcus and the children was tense but healing. Noah and Sophia's unrestrained joy at seeing me again broke through some of the awkwardness between Katherine and me. Marcus, to his credit, was warmly supportive later, confiding that he had been concerned about Catherine's approach but hadn't known how to intervene effectively. She was coming from a place of love, he told me privately. But fear twisted it into something else. I'm sorry I didn't step in sooner. We established a new rhythm meeting weekly for dinner, but otherwise maintaining our separate lives. Catherine made visible efforts to respect my boundaries, calling before visiting and restraining herself from commenting on my decisions. I could sometimes see the effort it took her, the questions she bit back, but she tried, and that meant everything. Walter gradually became part of these gatherings, initially joining us every other week, then more regularly as tensions eased. Catherine was cool toward him at first, watching his interactions with me like a hawk. But Walter's patience, kindness, and evident respect for me eventually won her over, or at least reduced her suspicions. Noah and Sophia took to Walter, immediately drawn to his architectural knowledge and the small sketching games he invented for them. Seeing my grandchildren bond with him brought me a joy I hadn't anticipated. 3 months after our reunion, I finally returned to my home. Walter helped me check everything carefully, but Catherine had respected my property in my absence. My house felt both familiar and strange, a place I had left in fear but returned to with newfound strength. Walter and I continued our relationship, traveling to California and New Mexico, in addition to our delayed Florida trip. I shared photos of our adventures on social media, and with Catherine gradually normalizing my active, independent lifestyle. My blog about elder autonomy grew beyond my expectations, connecting me with a community of seniors and advocates across the country. I began speaking at local senior centers about recognizing the line between protection and control, helping others identify and respond to well-intentioned but harmful family dynamics. Catherine attended one of these talks, sitting quietly in the back row. Afterward, she approached with tears in her eyes. "I didn't realize how many others experience what you went through," she said. "Listening to you, I finally understood how my actions must have felt from your perspective." And that evening, she gave me a book titled Supporting Aging Parents Without Taking Over. It was a small gesture, but a meaningful acknowledgement of the power imbalance she had tried to create. We had our setbacks, of course. During a Sunday dinner at their home, Catherine questioned a minor purchase I had mentioned, slipping back into her monitoring habit. The table fell silent as tension crackled between us. "I'm sorry, son," she said, quickly recognizing her mistake. "That's not my business unless you want it to be." These moments became less frequent over time as we established new patterns of interaction based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical concern. Last month, Catherine invited Walter and me to dinner without the children present. Over dessert, she formally apologized for the phone incident. "What I did was inexcusable," she said, her voice steady but emotional. "Breaking your property, threatening to control your life, it was abusive, plain and simple. I've been working with a therapist to understand why I reacted so extremely." She explained that her controlling behavior stemmed from complex fears: fear of losing me physically as she had lost her father, fear of being inadequate if I needed care and she couldn't provide it, fear of failing in what she perceived as her filial duty. "But none of that excuses what I did," she concluded. "I'm truly sorry, Mom." Her acknowledgement was a watershed moment in our healing process. For the first time, I felt fully seen and heard by my daughter, recognized as a complete person with rights and dignity rather than a responsibility to be managed. Walter and I have discussed marriage, though we're in no rush. We enjoy our independent living arrangements while spending most evenings together. Catherine has expressed support for whatever decision we make, a far cry from her initial opposition to our relationship. My home now has a sophisticated security system, a practical measure that gives both Catherine and me peace of mind without infringing on my independence. I've also made some sensible concessions to aging, like having grab bars installed in the bathroom and subscribing to a meal delivery service for nights when cooking feels too cumbersome. These changes were my choice, implemented on my timeline, which makes all the difference between adaptation and surrender. The broken phone incident, painful as it was, ultimately broke open a conversation that needed to happen, not just in my family, but in our broader society. How do we balance legitimate concern for aging loved ones with respect for their autonomy? How do we support without controlling? When does protection become prison? I don't have perfect answers to these questions, but I know this dignity matters at every age. The right to make our own decisions, including the right to make mistakes, doesn't expire when we reach a certain birthday. Catherine and I still have work to do. Trust once broken rebuilds slowly. But we're moving forward with greater understanding and respect, both of us learning and growing through this difficult journey. Each day I choose freedom, and each day Catherine learns to love me through respect rather than control. Sometimes you have to disappear to truly be seen. Have you ever had to take a dramatic stand to protect your dignity or independence? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to reclaim your power. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, age brings wisdom, not incompetence. Your voice matters at every stage of life.